my God, and here I have 87 degrees here. It feels so good.
1965, I was attending university in Saskatchewan, 1965. And back then, waiting for a bus to go to the university, it was minus 45. And
Oh my Lord.
and mini skirts were just coming out, and all these girls are wearing the mini skirts in minus 45. And the
Oh,
wind blowing at 30 miles an hour.
Well, when I was
passion before common sense.
I was stationed thanks to the United States Air Force, where I served for 4 years, and they sent me up to Goose Bay, Labrador. And I remember that being something like 40 and 60 below zero
Yeah.
Fahrenheit. But I also remember it for another remarkable reason, because we had wonderful parkas, of course, and they had genuine wolf fur around the neck of the parka, because apparently wolf fur doesn't freeze. So we could, they put it on the parkas.
So
And I remember staying out late when I was off duty and looking at the northern lights through this little hole in the wolf fur around the edge of the parka. I'll never forget the northern lights, because before I'd seen them, I had no idea that they moved, flashing across the sky. It's an amazing thing to see.
so you were a Greaves in wolf's clothing.
Okay, guys, we at one. There we go.
Yep. Okay. Cassie. Oh, maybe that's him. Yay. All right, that's it.
Oh, there you are, Gersha.
Hi. Just let me start the recording. 1 minute. Turn off my camera. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Poetry and Prose. It is October 27th, 2024, and this is our Halloween meetup. So get ready for spooky short stories and poetry. I'm looking forward to a great meeting. And I know we have it's also Diwali season in Trinidad. So we have a few members that may be leaving early, and we just want to get them all in. All righty. So we're going to go right into the meeting. Normally for Halloween, it's also folklore month. October is also folklore month in Trinidad. So we tend to do local folklore. But this year, we decided to switch it up and focus on a good old American Halloween. So we will go ahead and we will start off with Mutilal. He is reading Bitan for us today. Mutilal, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Wish. My story is entitled Bitan, and it's a local setting. Bitan was the village Bajon. No one knew his real name. We all said, "Good morning, Mr. Bitan," when we saw him, and he replied, "Good morning." My cousin Dean said he was called Bitan because he beat people. I often saw him fight with those who crossed him. He beat his neighbors whose cows ate his crops. He beat the young men who spoke to his daughter. He beat anyone by whom he felt provoked. However, he never fought with those he felt were smaller or weaker than him, unless they made him really angry. Many times you would see Bitan well dressed in white shirt, black pants, hat, and shiny black shoes. We would know that he was going to court for one of his many cases for fighting. I don't know how he managed, but I have never heard of Bitan making a jail. Although Bitan did not want his daughter talking to boys, they visited when he was not at home. One day, he came home and found Ramesh at his house. Ramesh ran away and was not seen for several days. Bitan went to his parents and insisted that Ramesh married his daughter. We waited to see what would happen. We heard that Ramesh's parents were making plans to send him away to America. Meanwhile, Beaton continued making plans for a wedding. One Friday evening, there was a loud commotion at Ramish's house. Dean said, "Man, woman, and child get it." The next week, Ramesh got married. He said, "I did always like she." Now, Beaton was a good gardener. His rows of okras and corn were always in a straight line, as if he had used a ruler to measure the distance between them. His watermelons, pumpkin, and bodi were of the finest quality, and he was the envy of the other farmers. Sometime at night, the older boys would go into his garden and steal his watermelon. These led to some of the fights that Beaton became involved in, and he never lost a single fight. Now, Beaton decided to build a small hut in the middle of the garden where he would spend nights and keep watch on his produce to deter the thieves. When he reaped his crop, he would keep them under his house before taking them to the market for sale. It was not unusual to see hundreds of pumpkins and watermelons under Beaton's house. When my big brother was getting married, my mother sent us to buy pumpkins for the wedding celebration. We went to Beaton. He wasn't at home, but he met his wife. She was crying. My brother asked her what the matter was. She replied, "Your uncle at home. He gone and living in Sivnarayan land with that lady with husband dead, and he does come home now and then." I asked my brother why he left his wife. My brother told me to shut up and go and sit in the car. We paid for the pumpkins and quickly went away. We called Beaton's new love, Lady James' mother. She and her son would regularly go to the new church in Raghunanan Trace morning and evening. Now, when we saw Beaton dressed in white shirt, black pants, and shiny shoes, he was not going to court, but he was going to church. Smitten by his new partner and wary of the younger men in the village, him being much older than her, Beaton chose to spend most of his time at his lady's home, and he neglected his garden. Soon the once pristine and productive fields became bush. Now Beaton and his first wife were Hindus and would keep a big puja once a year and invite the whole village. They had a little temple under the mango tree in the yard where they did devotions. Now, only Beaton's first wife did the devotions. She decided she will have her prayers as usual without Beaton. They now went through the village with the invitations and even invited Beaton's new family. Beaton was enraged. That evening, he went to his former home and began to quarrel with his wife. When he started to beat her, her daughter intervened and Beaton slapped her. He then began taking out the murtis from the temple and throwing them on the road, breaking the hands of Lord Ganesh. People attending the prayers charged towards Beaton and he ran away. Sarju Sadhu, who lived next door, comforted Beaton's wife and said that the tear that came from the Durga Murti's eye was a sign that Beaton will be severely punished. Sarju Sadhu put back the Murtis. Beaton's daughter never spoke to him again. Beaton disappeared from the village and was not seen for many years. His mistress soon picked up a younger man. One day, Chatar, who sold watermelons at the Shagonas market, told villagers he had seen Beaton. He was in a wheelchair, his legs amputated and begging at the market. When Chatar attempted to speak to him, he seemed to have forgotten who he was. A little later, a young man came and took him away, stuffing the money Beaton had collected into his pockets. The years went by. I was now a grown-up and working at the Pointe-a-Pierre refinery as a refinery operator, which mostly meant monitoring a panel of clock-like devices. During the night shift, I would read everything in the day's newspaper. I was surprised to see an advertisement for relatives to claim a body that was unacknowledged at the mortuary. The corpse was described as an East Indian man in his 70s, and only known name was Beta. I attempted to contact his daughter, but found that she had migrated to Canada with her family and had taken her mother with her, and no one knew how to contact them. A few months later, I saw another notice in the newspaper, an advertisement asking that relatives of Beaton, last known address Gopi Trace Pinal, contact a law office as regards property inheritance. There was no one I know to contact. Beaton House still stands, but is covered with vine with several doors and windows missing. However, the little temple under the mango tree remained intact and in pristine condition, as if someone is taking care of it, although no one can say who. Yet others have reported that they have seen a ghostly figure dressed in black pants, white shirt, and shiny shoes, with clasped hands, kneeling before the closed door, as if asking forgiveness and begging for the door to open. Thank you.
Thank you, Mutilal. Any comments?
Very nice, very nice. Yes. Yeah.
I love the creepiness of it. But I feel like I've heard this one before, Mutilal. Is this an original piece or did you add it to the bit? Hi, good afternoon, Alicia. Alicia says great story. Okay. All right. Well, I believe Mutilal is still with us.
Okay, I'll be here for
Mutilal,
about the next 20 minutes or so, and then I'd be leaving. Thanks for
Oh.
accommodating me.
no problem. You were muted. I was asking, was this an edited story? I feel like I
Yes,
heard about this one before.
yes, we had another story in my first book called Kahani about Beta, but
That's
that
where I
was
read
a
it.
different story.
Oh,
Again.
okay.
It's just probably the first maybe 10, 15 lines might be the same to introduce Beta.
Yes, that's probably where I read it. Okay, because Bitan is definitely a character. Mutilal, soon you'll be able to bring out books by characters' names and just the characters' story. Thank you
Look,
so much.
Althea want to say something.
Yeah,
Oh.
I was just wondering, is it based on a true story? It seemed as though it was someone that you knew in your surroundings, and because a lot of our stories are based on
It was are you hearing me now?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay, yes, it was based on a true story because sometimes in the country area in the Hindu community, we have a lot of this conversion taking place, people going to new religions. We have these itinerant preachers, they come here and they convince people to change their religion. And sometimes
okay.
when they do, in this particular case, this man changed his religion. And
Yeah.
sometimes they take what we call the murtis from the temple or whatever it is, they take it and they throw it away and discard it and all that. So this is an incident that actually occurred in my village.
Okay.
Okay, I hope
Thanks.
that
Thanks, Mutilal. Any other comments? If not, we're going to move on to Cassie Single. All right, Cassie will be reading for us a creepy poem. Cassie, the floor is all yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I too was hoping to read early and leave, around 1:30, but I'm stuck because rain is falling and I usually have to walk a good distance to the main road to get transport to where I'm going on Sunday. Well, I may be around for longer than I thought. Um, what I'm about to read may have heard or read before, and it's my imagination. It's not based on anything that I am aware of. Uh, so let me just get it here. Uh, right. So it's called Boo Hoo. Babu tumbled off his bed. He must be a jumbie, his father said. Plants catapulted to the ground on their own without a sound. Mannequin dressed in ghostly apparel appeared at night dressed in a towel. Dogs barked at a passerby no one can spot, run off when they hear the clang of a pot. These things occur not far from each other. No neighbor sees or knows the door. Some say it's the man who recently moved in. To the community, his hand like a fin. Some say it's the woman they always suspected, as by many she was constantly rejected for being precocious and for gossiping, though housewives found her tales interesting. Some even thought it was the family of 5 whose daughter went missing, then returned alive with a baby kissing. Of all these suspects, each group was sure, though no one knew beyond another's door. One day they heard a growl, a grunt, strange coughing. Some peeped and saw a shadow run off in the direction of the river. Some surmised it was the child father. They would not be surprised if it were the gossiper, or must be a sukuya, or the mister with a hand like a fin, returning home, or the stranger going out to roam. Perhaps it was only the mannequin, or the jumbie gone to rinse its skin. A group followed in procession to riverbank, talking loudly as they drank, as if honoring the ghost that suddenly sank. Stewed chicken so sweet with curry chana, wild meat laced with Congo pepper. They gorged themselves in glee till midnight, then gradually transformed, which caused the fright to children and adults who were aghast at the sight. The dead are not dead, they chanted. Bells rang, waking up Babsy, who kicked her pram. The end. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. Any comments?
Your deep voice really suit that poem.
Sorry, I didn't hear what to say. That was Harold.
Yeah.
Yes, Harold.
Yeah, it really does. It's a really great deep voice, and you read it well. Yeah, very well.
Oh, thank you very much, Harold. Thank you for the applause, Walter. I saw as they applauding. Well, I'm going to enjoy the rest. Can't move from here now. So
Okay. Thank you so much, Cassie.
you're welcome, Lucia.
The next person to read would be Cynthia and Cynthia Birch, and she will be reading Robin Part 2. Cynthia, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. This story by Mutilal, I'm so happy he asked me to read it. Sapin, born with a mark that looks like a snake along their spine and sometimes on the thigh like a small vein, a sapin is mostly a woman but can sometimes be a man as well. The snake on their spine is actually a type of snake spirit that comes alive during lovemaking. The snake bites the sapin's partner and returns to its place. They never feel the bite, neither are they poisoned, but they always die in the next day or two. The sapin is unaware of this curse that proves fatal to their partners, and is said to be so strikingly alluring and beautiful that it is hard for them to stay without a partner for long, only to have their next significant other die soon after they sleep together. The curse of the sapin is to remain alone forever or risk killing their lover. The source is given CaribbeanAuthors.wordpress.com. Tammy knew she was different from the other children. After all, she had no father like the others, no birthday parties or toys at Christmas. Although she wore the hand-me-down clothes from her cousins, so sometimes Cammy would be dressed as a girl and sometimes as a boy. They seldom played with her, as their mothers discouraged this. When she was about 4 and asked about her father, her mother told her that no good man gone away and was never coming back, and never to speak of him again. She never did, but would secretly listen when her two aunts would maliciously gossip about how he had been driven away the morning after the big flood, following the night she was born. He had arrived drunk as a fish. No one cared that he was stranded at Maharaja's rum shop until the water went down. He couldn't mind his wife, and no way could he mind a child, and her grandfather was fed up with minding a loafing bum. After her daughter's birth and her husband's departure, Paro became a little featherbrained. She kept to herself, rarely leaving the house, and soon she was the one cooking, cleaning, and doing household chores, while the others worked in the lagoon. Cammy stayed close to her mother, holding to the hem of her dress, thumb in her mouth as she followed her everywhere. Neither licks nor pepper rubbed on the thumb would break the habit, and Cammy's thumb always looked squingy and had a bit of a scent. Taro, who had quit high school to elope with her husband, was determined Cammy have an education, and at an early age began teaching her. When she began primary school, she was way ahead of the other children. She still put her thumb in her mouth, but mostly when she was in deep concentration with her reading or doing her sums. She was a good student, despite being sickly. As expected, she passed her common entrance and was assigned to Naparima Girls High School in San Fernando. When she was in Form 2, she became ill with rheumatic fever and stayed at the San Fernando General Hospital for 2 months. After she was discharged, being thin and seemingly malnourished, she was recommended to the convalescent home, or what was then known as the Red Cross, to regain her strength. This was an institution run by the Red Cross to assist poorer families. It was there at 13 she met her first love and had her first sexual experience. When Dylan died suddenly 2 days later, and the doctors could not figure out why, she felt she was in some way responsible. The nurses found out about her and Dylan, and on her mother's next visit, she was sent home. Cammy resumed school, her studies seemingly unaffected by her stay at the hospital. But she kept away from boys, even the favored ones for Nap's girls, those from presentation. She immersed herself in studies, especially the sciences, and was particularly obsessed with biology. She showed no distress in the dissection of the frogs, and would regularly bring to class chloroformed butterflies and small snakes, scorpions and spiders, alive and wriggling in glass jars. Her classmates shunned her, but she savored her solitude. She passed her O-levels with flying colors and refused an offer for A-levels, instead choosing to apply for a position as a clerical assistant in the civil service. She was elated when she secured one in the Red House. She could now get far away from all that distressed her, away from Puzzle Island and her grandfather's house, which gave her the feeling of being in jail, away from her scattered-brained mother and the stupid, spiteful cousins, away from the infantile behavior of her classmates and the unwelcome advice of the few teachers who pretended they liked her, but in fact pitied her. Freedom had come at last. She rented a room in town and would visit her mother on weekends. Soon these became once a month and then stopped altogether. In the euphoria of this newfound liberty, she failed to remember her foreboding of male friendliness. Dylan was a faint memory, and when Krishna, a colleague at work, suggested she accompany a group of staffers to a Maracas Lime on the Easter weekend, she agreed. The magic of the waves, music, and good humor thrilled her, and for the first time in her life she felt a sense of belonging. She had never tasted beer before, and the two she had induced a feeling of belonging, induced a feeling of merriment. When she became tipsy at the end of the day, no one felt uneasy when Krishna offered to take her to her apartment. Next thing she remembered waking up with both of them in bed. She was horrified. They were not even good friends, just co-workers. Who was to blame? Sensing her discomfort, Krishna muttered apologies and left. Tuesday morning came. She dreaded going to work. When she reluctantly did, she arrived late and tried to avoid the rest of the staff. She soon observed a colleague crying. Krishna had struck a concrete barrier on the beacon that morning on his way to work and died. Tammy felt both relief and grief. Grief because Krishna had always been kind and pleasant to her. Relief because no one would know what had happened when Krishna dropped her home. Yet she could not help wondering about the chance of the only two people she had had sex with having untimely deaths. She resolved that there would be no more deep relationships, but managed to maintain friendships at work as her associates had replaced the family she did not want to have contact with. She was also relieved when she had her regular period. When a brief affair she was having with a policeman ended, as he was shot dead at a roadblock, she again felt somehow responsible. She returned for the first time in years to Puzzle Island to consult her guru, Pandit Sunil, who comforted her. These are just coincidences. Nothing is wrong with you, my child. Their time came and they went. That was their karma. Although heartened by his words, Tammy promised herself to be extra careful in all future relationships. The months passed quickly. Christmas was in the air, and with it the departmental Christmas party. Alvin had been paying her compliments all year. She had been flippantly rebuffing his advances, but he was persistent. She sensed he was genuine, and when he asked her to marry him, she was excited. Handsome, smart, and a senior officer, he was the one all the other girls were chasing, and he had chosen her. Her doubts about the fate of her previous lovers faded away. Perhaps she had been punished for having sex before marriage. She vowed there would be no intercourse until after the wedding. Alvin, who was very much in love, agreed, provided that the wedding be held within 3 months. The wedding night came. A sliver of moonlight wafted through the gently moving curtains and illumined Cammie's back as she lay asleep after love-making. Alvin, reveling in his good luck, moved in to hug his alluring bride when he noticed the mark on her spine. What a beautiful tattoo! Just like a snake, he thought. It almost looks alive, he whispered drowsily to himself as he fell asleep. Thank you. That's the end of the story.
Ah,
Thank you. What a story. Something.
A lovely
Any,
story.
yeah, any comment? Any comment?
Well, I love the way that it's handled so delicately. And then the end comes and it just leaves you thinking. So I think that was one of a lovely construction of this story by Motilal.
yes,
Yeah, I love
agree
Mutua.
with you. Yeah, I like where he just leaves it to whatever might happen next. And you think, oh, okay, well, I think I know what happens next, but nevertheless, yeah, wonderful ending.
Lovely story. Thank you so much for reading, Cynthia. It was lovely read.
You
We have a new story today by Artie Janke. Artie, are you online? Kindly unmute. I saw her come in. She's still there. No, I'm not. Oh, yeah, she is. Artie, you're muted.
Okay. You can hear me now, right?
Yes, we can. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Okay. So I am going to read a story that is titled Pumpkin Pride. It is taken from the book Witty and Wise. The hot August sun had dried up the grass, forcing the pumpkin out of hiding. A 20-something-ish pound green pumpkin with white splashes was still connected to the vine, nearing its last, smack dab in the middle of the Pitti Karim season. She surprised me, this lone pumpkin, practically jumping out at me as I took a walk in the backyard garden that had been overgrown with weeds. I told my younger brother about the pumpkin as we lived side by side and shared the garden. Pick it when it is ripe, I said to him. You don't want it? Boy, you know I don't really like pumpkin. A week later, he picked the pumpkin, cut it into 5 pieces to share among our brothers and sisters living side by side. He put it in the pieces in plastic bags and stored it in the back seat of his car. And on his way to work, he thought he would drop the pumpkin off to the 4 households. He took a bath and went to sleep, having worked all night. At 5 p.m., when he got up to reach San Fernando to work later that day, after a few days, he looked at the back seat and wondered what was there in the back seat in boxes. Oh my God, he groaned, throwing his hand in the air for forgetting all about delivering the pumpkin. The precious pumpkin was ruined. When he told Ma about the pumpkin, she had to laugh, even though she was upset. Pumpkin was her favorite food, just like Karaili was Pa's. Years ago, Ma had planted pumpkin on a 2-acre parcel of land we used to call over the river. The pumpkin spread its vine, climbing onto the sugarcane stalks, and it produced a bumper harvest. Ma took the pumpkin to the market where it fetched a good price. She also contributed contributed from the harvest for wedding menus and the community meals for yagnas and other religious occasions. The pumpkin over the river were not very large, but were plentiful and were of the melt in your mouth variety. At the back of the mandir in the yard, pumpkin skin and seeds with the soft pulp were thrown out when pumpkin was cooked for the pujas. Many families shared in the pumpkin that just grew wild, and I remember picking the soft buds of the pumpkin stem to mix with the other types of edible leaves to make a delicious bhaji. The times when we had to buy pumpkin to cook for the puja, someone who knew about pumpkin was given a task. A watery pumpkin is better for the garbage than for eating, or so the folks would say. It almost always fell on Carmen, my big sister from Siparia, who was an expert in finding the right pumpkins to buy. Rough skin, also called crapoback pumpkin, was the best, she used to say. With the right type of pumpkin, force would have to be applied on the spoon to turn the pot, just like when you cook in Parasad. One day, when the middle-aged woman in my family embarked on cooking big pot for the pujas, the pumpkin oozed so much, they said it looked like one could take a swim on the watery surface. What kind of pumpkin is this? Asked Indra, the chief Jahaji iron cook of the family, with a heavy frown expressing her disappointment. How does pumpkin picari go taste? She questioned. Then, still turning the yellow cubes in the big pot with a dabla, she declared, the damn thing watery. Brahma Beti, whom we call Didi, put her hands on her hips and said, bring a little basin for me. Indra pulled out a paper bag with the grind dal. Look, girl, I have the grind dal right here. Beti took a measure of the basin with a cup and called for a shifter. You go see how pumpkin could taste, she said. Bauji, peeling garlic nearby, interjected, I don't want to see how good it's going to taste. I want to taste and relish some good pumpkin today. Beti took the dabla from Indra and stirred the pot. You go see pumpkin in your pumpkin and then tell me if you ever tasted a better pumpkin. She gave the woman a new recipe for cooking watery pumpkin. One year, the pumpkin brought bad luck to the family. At the back of Raghubar Kaka's old house, where the landslide had claimed his home, the gutter blazed with pumpkin that could make the mouth water or hurt the eye. It was a bad sign. Anytime you see things being too much, it's trouble coming, Ma said. Kaka died that year. The family cried and grieved for the man who, as far back as they could remember, had made them laugh. Life had to go on, and a date was set for my niece Sasha's wedding. Ma asked Kaka's wife for some pumpkin for the wedding feast. Anybody want pumpkin? Let them go and pick it, she said without hesitation. Tanti Dolly clearly wanted the pumpkin that reminded her of the death of her husband and the bad sign gone from the land. Sasha's brothers hauled pumpkin until they got tired. They had to make 2 trips with a vehicle to and from Barakpur where they lived. Leaving the pumpkin state of Chatur Gali, imagine my surprise to find pumpkins heaped high for sale when I first visited the United States during the month of October. Now, on my 3rd rendezvous, I decided to embrace the American pumpkin and found my first love, a tickling story to share with Chatur Gali pumpkin lovers. I wondered what they would make of the pumpkin being carved to hold a lantern that would keep ghosts and evil spirits away. I bet my nephew would say that instead of mutilating the pumpkin, Chatur Gali could have sent some cooks with ingredients to experiment on these large, pretty round vegetables so lightly treated in American society. You just cannot waste good pumpkin like that, he would surely say. I imagine myself back home at one of the cooking sessions, telling the story of the Halloween pumpkin that took its glory, according to the legend, from the Irish where Stingy Jack lived. So, this man, I would tell my very ready audience, invited a devil for a drink and carried him to the nearest rum shop. And just like we boys here at home, time to pay, Stingy Jack planning to out scheme the bartender. So he tricked the devil into producing a coin. Still too stingy to give up the coin, he put it in his back pocket where he had a cross pendant. Jack made the devil promise not to bother him for 1 year, and when the time passed, Jack tricked the devil again. He fooled him up to climb up into a jackfruit tree to pick the fruits. While the devil was up in the tree, Jack carved a cross on the trunk so that the devil could not come down. He made the devil promise not to bother him for the next 10 years. Within that 10 years, Jack died. God refused him entry to heaven, of course. The devil, too, didn't want anything to do with Jack. He gave Jack a piece of lighted coal and cast him out in the darkness. The Irish people carved out the guts of a potato and put a small candle inside to drive away evil spirits. And when they came to America, they found that the pumpkin, when carved, made an impressive jack of the lantern holder. So Trini Talcari makers now in America decided not to carve but to cook the pumpkin, leaving the legend and the celebrations to others. I talked to Reshmi about this pumpkin and she said at once, it is not the same like pumpkin back home. She had been living in America for several years and said, pumpkin here nice to make bread and cakes. It is more like wild pumpkins. She boasted that she could make any kind of pumpkin taste good. Like Betty, she's innovative and knows how to mix pumpkin with squash and add the right amount of masala to make pumpkins taste delicious. I made my way to the main shopping center and chose a big, nice pumpkin weighing 12 pounds. At home, I placed it on the center of the kitchen table and held the tip of the knife over it. I was about to cut into it when I remembered how in Trinidad, Ma's generation used to tell us children not to cut the pumpkin. Get one of the boys to cut it, they would say. I later learned that the pumpkin represented a woman's womb, and by cutting the pumpkin, a mother to be can be cursed to abort the fetus. I am past childbearing years, yes, yet I hesitate to cut into the pumpkin, taking time to admire it and to reminisce on the wonderful days and the many ways in which pumpkin was a part of my life. Without pumpkin, no vegetarian feast is complete. The better part of it is in the young leaves growing at the tip of the vine that makes a good bhaji when added to dashin bush and chaurai. The pumpkin vine is also symbolic in my mind to my people who shared the long journey by sea to come to Trinidad and are spread out just like pumpkin vine across the land, remaining connected even when the vine is almost dry, one generation to another. Thank you.
Very
Thank
nice.
you, RP. I loved that piece. I saw a meme the other day where it said like the rest of the world, and it had pumpkin like cooked in various forms, and then they said in America, and it was like pumpkins just on people's porch.
Yes, yes.
So
One of the things that I miss here is pumpkin pie. We don't have pumpkin pie here at all, as far as I know. And I can't even find the spices to make it in any of the markets.
Yeah, I think pumpkin
wonderful
pie is
pie.
actually my favorite as well.
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
The other thing is the pumpkin, so-called pumpkin that we are accustomed to in Trinidad, where you have the pulp being very firm.
Yes.
I find it here in butternut squash. And
Right, yes.
so I use butternut squash to make the various Trinidad dishes, which I didn't know when I lived in Trinidad, but I thank God for YouTube.
Yes, you can find these things now on the social media. But these are the stories I wrote for the children in the secondary schools where I normally go to talk to. I just wanted them to know that you could write about anything. and how things connect, the pumpkin that they're cooking at home to the other things. So it's that kind of Trinidad kind of setting thing that connects to the other parts of the world.
During a trick or treat at Halloween, when I lived in Santa Barbara, California,
Yes.
for fun, I had a very gory looking sign that said, "Kiddies, just leave your goodies by the door in the bucket and you will come to no harm." And I hung it on the door. And it was really interesting because many of the kids would drop some of their candy bars and stuff in the bucket. You know,
Yes.
my son loved that because it actually gave him a bit more after his own trick or treating.
Yes.
Always at the bucket.
Yeah, this whole week has been Halloween with the kids. They having the teenagers having their party and the younger ones having their parties as well. So it's going to be on Thursday or Friday, I think. But the whole week they have been celebrating.
Oh yeah. Well, the one little quick story here before I actually read what I'm going to do later on. One Halloween, a coworker had asked me to share Halloween with her at her place, the trick-or-treating. And I decided to actually come as a pumpkin. I put on rags on my body, and then over my head, we found a very, very large pumpkin that we carved out as a jack-o'-lantern face, and I put the whole thing over my head. It was a very dramatic looking costume. The problem is that several days after Halloween, all I could smell was pumpkin.
It was a very original idea though to put it on your head.
Yes, but I thought, oh my God, all those days later, I thought, oh my God, all I'm smelling is pumpkin.
Well, you won't do that again.
No, I wouldn't recommend it.
All right. Thank you for everyone. Shares. We're going to go ahead to Willard Gopal, and he's going to be reading for us Mousy from Barrackpore. Willard, the floor is
Hi.
yours.
Thank you, Chairperson. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I remember reading this story before. Are you hearing me, by the way?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Yes. Just trying to get it here on the, yeah, just one sec. What's going on? Just trying to get it back here on the Microsoft because okay, sorry about that. Yeah. YouTube. Okay, yeah. My apologies again. So this story is entitled Mousy from Barrackpore. And it goes like this. Not too long ago, there was a beautiful and fashionable, not so old woman in the town of Barrackpore who was well versed in the ways of the world. We called her Mousy. She ran a restaurant and bar and had working for her a bevy of young, curvaceous, and full-bosomed girls. The young as well as the not so young and even more elderly men flocked her bar. For a price, a pleasure-seeking man could secure the companionship of one of these alluring and sultry models, as they were called. There was also in that same city a robber and thief named Samson, so called because he was a strong, handsome, and well-built. He used to enter people's houses at night and rob at will. The villagers assembled and complained to the police sergeant, who himself was a patron of Mousy's establishment and a friend of Samson. When their grievances were ignored, they sought the help of the police commissioner, who was at that time the head of an evangelical church. The commissioner liaised with the head of the army and they ordered that soldiers and policemen be posted everywhere in Barrackpore. Samson was caught, and Mousie's business fell into lean times. Peace and quiet returned to Barrackpore. Mousie was standing at her window, and looking down on the street, she saw Samson being arrested. He was muscularly built, with handsome features, and she loved him at first sight. She reflected, if I can have that attractive hunk, I will give up this bad life of mine and live respectably with him. For now, her business enterprises had dried up. She, as many before has done, had turned to religion. Now, Mousie, unlike Samson, had been saving up her money and had huge investments in property and jewelry. Indeed, her jewelry was worth millions, as she loved dressing up. When Samson was unable to secure bail, she gained his freedom by posting several $1,000s to the courts, and then he gratefully married her, and they lived in delight and luxury. The robber, after 5 or 6 months, thought, I shall never be able to stay in this one place. I cannot stand being cooped up, but I cannot go empty-handed. Mousie's ornaments and jewelry are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I will kill her and take them. For unlike Mousie, he was not smitten by Cupid. So he said to her one day, darling, when I was being arrested, I prayed and promised an offering to the sacred tree god on the San Fernando Hill. If I was ever released, I have been having bad dreams lately. It is as if he is now threatening me because I have not kept my part of the bargain. Let us go there and make the offering. Mousie replied, very well, dear. We will prepare and send it. Darling, it will not do to just send it. Let us both go and present it, wearing all our ornaments and jewels, as is the custom when we are doing prayers, for this can be seen as a thanksgiving to the gods. Very well, my dearest one, we'll do so. He made her prepare the offerings, and together they went along with several villagers to the San Fernando Hill. When they reached the bottom of the hill, he said, dear, the tree god, seeing this crowd of people, will not accept the offering. Let just two of us go up and present it. She consented, and he made her carry the basket containing the flowers, parsad, and other puja ingredients. Meanwhile, he was carrying a cutlass for preparing the baby, and when they reached the top, he set the offering at the foot of a tree, which grew beside a precipice as high as one can see. He then said, there, I have not come here to present any offerings. I have come with the intention of killing you and going away with all your ornaments and jewels. Take all of them off and make a bundle of them in your sari. Mousie, in surprise, asked, husband, why will you kill me? For your money and jewelry. He laughed. Mousie replied, husband, remember the good I have done for you. When you were locked up in jail, I gave up a rich man for you and paid a large sum of money to secure your bail. I have never looked at another man since we were married. Please, please do not kill me. I will give you as much money as you want and be your slave. Here she begins to recite. Hear Here is a golden necklace and emeralds and pearls. Take all and welcome. Place me with your servant girls. Samson then replies, Fair lady, lay your jewels down and do not weep, and do not weep no more. I have to kill you, for only then I will be sure. Mousy is thinking, this rascal will not spare my life, so I will take his life first by throwing him down the precipice in some way. She then recited these two verses. Within all my years and conscious memory, no man have I ever loved more than thee. Come hither for my last salute. Receive my last embrace, for never more upon this earth shall we meet face to face. Samson, impatient with her delaying, said, Very well, dear, come and embrace me. Mousy walked around him in respectful salutation 3 times, kissed him, and saying, Now, husband, I am going to bow to you on all your 4 sides, as is the tradition of my religion. She put her head on his foot, bowed at his sides, and went behind him as if to bow there. Then with the strength of and determination of a desperate woman facing certain death, she took him by his feet and threw him head over heels down to his destruction. He was crushed to pieces and died on the spot. Seeing his deed, the God who lived on the mountaintop spoke these verses. Cunning is not only confined to the men. Wiser than the male are the women. So Mousy killed Samson. When she came down from the mountain and came among her attendants, they asked her where her husband was. She said, He's uphill still. He has much to atone for, and may be there for many, many days. Mousy then proceeded to her home. The end.
Well, no one reads that better than you.
Thank you.
Very well,
Very good, Willard.
very well read.
Yeah, thank you.
I felt like I was a child again in reading time when I used to take you to the library. And I love Mousy. I love how Mousy dealt with
Yes,
it.
yes. I'm
Any comments?
Yeah,
You're welcome there. You're welcome.
very well
Sorry
read.
about the few
Very
technical
well read,
hitches.
Willard, very
No,
well
it
read.
was lovely reading.
Thank you, Harold.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Althea?
Yes, it reminds me of one of the stories in the anthology put out by this group. There's a story in it where this man marries a wealthy woman with the purpose of killing her in the end to get all her riches. And anyway, in the end, she out-tricked him, and she was a sly one in the end. You know, she was a survivor. So yeah, there's a message there. You can be cunning.
Yes,
You
it's a
can be
common
cunning,
theme.
and yeah,
Yeah, it's a
you
common
have to
theme. I've
use
seen
your
it in
head.
movies. Yeah.
Use your head in tricky situations.
Yes. Seen it in these suspense movies and so on. It's a theme has been used a lot.
Never corner a wild animal or a woman. You always try to-
That's correct. So thanks again for your comments. Lovely comments.
Thanks, Willard.
I
If
appreciate
any, we are always happy to hear you read because you have to come and do a workshop at some point. because
Okay.
I really enjoy your reading and the way you read your work. And I've been to a lot of functions outside of
Sure, no
Poetry and Prose
problem. I
where
like
people
that
are
very
always
much.
like,
Yeah.
can you read to me? I'm nervous to read my work. And the way you're able to capture the works that we create, really love it.
You're most welcome. I like that very much. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Willard, I just got some more theater books too, so if you ever wend your way up to St. James, I think you'd be interested in having it, take a look at them.
Okay, Harold, no problem. I'll be in touch. I'll be sure to get in touch with you. Okay.
All right, take care.
All righty, we're gonna move ahead to our lovely Heather Latu Ferguson. She's going to be reading her story for us, Chandra's Thoughts on Halloween. Heather, the
Hi.
floor is all yours.
Well, I am going to talk about how North American Halloween has come to Trinidad and how some people might view it. Chandra and her thoughts on Halloween. From the time Chandra come home from foreign, she talking about all the stupid holidays those people in foreign celebrated. They have Thanksgiving and Halloween and thing. Holiday we never had in Trinidad when she grew up. You ever hear? For one thing, Thanksgiving seemed like a good idea in theory, giving thanks to God for all his blessings. But instead of that, the amount of wastefulness it has caused is a sin. People encouraged to gorge themselves on the worst meat you could buy. Dry up turkey with a set of vegetables like Brussels sprout, potato stuffing, and cranberry sauce, which is like eating jam with meat. You ever hear so much trippiness? And we from a country with tastiest food in the world. Doubles, curry aloo, chana, dal puri, stew chicken, shark and bake. Man, the list could go on. We should be teaching foreigners how to cook. Then Halloween. Children going from house to house bothering the neighbor and them, threatening to play a trick on them if they don't get treats. And they in disguise too. A weak rendition of dressing up for carnival. So everybody have to stock up on sweetie and thing to hand out to prevent the worst wickedness from happening. What are we teaching them little children and them? Extortion. When they get big and robbing bank with your money or your life, we saying we ain't know where they learn such bad behavior. And the worst part yet, everybody buying perfectly good pumpkin to use as decoration in their yard and carve up with an ugly grin to light up on the big night when hordes of children coming by your house ringing the doorbell and disturbing you from the 8 o'clock news. Every minute you have to get up and answer the door, and today children so rude and demanding. Plus, the pumpkin carving thing is a waste of perfectly good food. And just when in Canada, for example, they say 25% of the population have food insecurity, and record amounts of families have to use food banks to eat. And even the food banks are all running out of food and have to ask citizens for handouts. Just think of all the pumpkin talkery and pumpkin soup and thing we could make with them pumpkin for ourselves, or even to feed the animal population like pigs and horses and them. People just don't have money to spare. And lately the news says sugar and cocoa prices higher due to poor crops in the world because of global warming in their growing regions. So it's going to cost more to buy treats just to give away and to strangers too. And that goes for Christmas and Valentine's Day too. But you can't look cheap and miserly, so what are you gonna do? Chandra surprised to see how these North American traditions now reach Trinidad. Why? Why we have to adopt white people trippiness? We don't have we own holidays? You just see North Americans celebrating Indian Arrival Day or Emancipation Day. And as for Trinis, you really want your children going around in the neighbor house at night when Jambi, Sukuya, Dwen and them out and around? Or worse yet, predatory molesters and them? Instead of Halloween in my day, we used to have All Saints around November 1st. And that's Catholic. But we used to go anyway and clean up family graves in the cemetery. Mommy used to pack a big basket of food for we to eat. We used to sit down on the gravestones having a picnic. It was like the ancient Egyptians' reverence for the dead. Halloween just doesn't make sense in Trinidad. For one thing, it started out in England as a way for pagans in Celtic times to celebrate harvest before the start of winter. Then they would wear disguises to ward off ghosts. We don't have harvest in Trinidad or winter. We used to have crop over, but that was in July or August. So even the timing off. Trinidad's a truly mimic man like Naipa saying. We follow an ancient Celtic culture when we should be having our own interesting sugarcane history. All of this making Chandra vex. Her husband Rudy say, Chandra girl, why you beating up your ass over this thing? Isn't every holiday a mix-up of cultures? Christmas was from Christianity, but it mixed up with pagan Michaelmas. And Valentine's Day was all about Saint Valentine's, but everybody forget he and is about hearts and flowers now. And Easter was about Christ rising from the dead, but the bunnies and eggs represent new life in spring. And how all of them have to do with chocolate? Well, Chandra had to laugh at Rudy. He lightened up her mood. Then the doorbell rang. It was her daughter Monica and grandson Satish visiting from foreign where they live in. The grandson running in and excitedly handed her a drawing he did of a Halloween pumpkin. Grandma, I made this for you, he said. She put it on the fridge with a magnet. I so proud of you, Satish. Nice pumpkin, she said. Then the daughter handed her a bag. Here, Ma, I make up some spicy pumpkin seeds for you. I see a recipe on the internet. They are nutritious and tasty. They go in good with the Starbucks pumpkin spice latte I bring for you. Starbucks? But we have coffee tree growing right here. And you know your granny used to pick coffee beans, dry them up, grind them up for coffee, the best in the world. Any coffee tree growing in foreign? And pumpkin seeds? We used to throw those out in my day. We eating rubbish now. No, now you can save them from the carved out pumpkins and bake them at 350 degrees for 10 minutes on an oiled pan and sprinkle some spices to taste. They are delicious. Try them. Chandra watched the pumpkin seeds hard. Then she popped them in her mouth quick. But, they tasted nice, man, said Chandra, chomping away on the seeds. Just then, Chandra's daughter handed her her shopping flyer she bring from her home in foreign to show her. Look, Ma, look how Walmart in the US have big Diwali sale with 2-for-1 starting Saturday. Oh, all them big stores making money on Diwali now, eh? Those white people something else. They discriminate against Indian, but they use it we holy holidays to make money, Chandra said, getting vexed again. But what you expect? Every holiday is an opportunity here and in foreign for people to make money, Rudy said. That is why Halloween fooling up people in Trinidad. But in the end, it's all about the money. Money is the true God now. And with that, Chandra, Rudy, and the family sit down around the table eating their pumpkin seeds and drinking their pumpkin spice latte with little Satish running around chanting, Happy Halloween, Happy Diwali. You see how the child confused, said Chandra. He don't know one celebration from another. It's okay, Ma. That is what being Trini is all about. It's not going to hurt the boy. After all, we are a melting pot, and we all celebrate each other's special day. Just think of us as one big, delicious pilau, said Monica. The more thing mix up, the better it tastes. Well, I like pilau, said Chandra. You could say we are the pilau ambassadors of the world then, said Rudy, smiling at the clever title he just laid down on his fellow Trinis. And that is my story. The end.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
That's
Heather.
great.
Very nice.
Great.
Yeah.
Heather, that
Congrats.
was a very funny presentation. I was smiling all the way through
Yeah.
because of how true it was. And secondly,
Yeah.
not only was it funny, it was a serious treatise
Yeah.
on the ambiguity of cultural appropriation in a sort of a reverse way.
Agreed.
And then on top of that, using the Trinidadian vernacular to generate interest. And so I think it in a way it was a comical presentation about a serious and contemporary topics. Excellent, well done.
Yeah.
Thank you, Frank.
Yes.
You know, that's one of the stories, Harold, in my book. And you
Lovely.
said you keep the Trini, so I will.
Yes, absolutely. It's a hilarious story. Yeah. We've got we're a total pessimist there, you know.
Yeah.
Althea has a comment.
Yes. One of my favorite lines was the line about extortion, where the
Yeah.
kids come to your door, and if you don't give them sweets, then they pelt eggs or whatever, you know. So that was, for me, that was one of the funniest lines. And very true in a way, yes,
Well,
extortion.
I have fun writing these funny things, Look, I'm a Trini all alone in a place where there's no other Trinis. So I have to entertain myself.
Well, I enjoyed it, and Chandra sound very miserable. We'll move along if there are no other comments to Althea, Mark Romeo, and she will be reading Asling with Another Eye. Hold on.
Okay.
You. Althea, the floor is all
Okay.
yours.
Yes. Aislinn with Another Eye. Aislinn first saw the shadow at the age of 5 while playing under their house. Like most houses in Rotten Town, it stood on wooden pilings as a precaution against hurricane flooding. The shadow invaded her quiet place, playing peekaboo, flitting and flirting, lurking where the sun rays could not reach. The first time she saw it, she called it frayed, her heart pounding. She barely held herself together as she ran to her parents, her thin copper-colored frame letting out shrieks as she flew into their arms. It was then her father told her she had another eye like him, and his mother before him, an eye that saw the departed still lingering around on earth, some trying to settle unfinished business, some watching over loved ones, and some with uncertain motives. They hid in dark corners, in shadows and shaded places, or emerged in the quiet of late night. When his mother was young, there were many with another eye. The living and the dead shared the same space. The departed could be seen going about their business in Rotten Town. In those days, they took longer to complete their business on earth. They disappeared at the roaring sounds of airplanes and motor cars. As living grew louder, they crossed the divide to the other world sooner rather than later. One of his most harrowing encounters happened when he was returning home from his farm late one evening, and a shadow screamed at him. The cry echoed in the hills, shaking the surrounding trees. Rooted in fear, his feet froze, and his head became a chamber of noise. And then the shadow disappeared. After its warning, he never stayed out that late again. Her second experience became a cautionary tale about not letting your other eye lead you astray. Aisling was 8 years old when she was beguiled by a shadow. When a search party was sent out, they found her burning up with fever, curled up under a tamarind tree on the outskirts of the town. Aisling was distracted and led into the bush where the trees were silhouetted against the setting sun. Aisling remembered a blurred figure waving her on. She was lured by curiosity. The soft voice of the dark, long-fingered vision had coaxed her forward. The fog-shaped woman wore a long, ruffled, empire-waisted dress. The shadow had walked slowly, hovering over the dirt path just out of earshot of the villagers returning home from their farms. Some cotton pickers were the last to see Aislinn walking in the opposite direction. After Aislinn was found, her mother and aunts placed her in a huge basin of water filled with sage, rosemary, thyme, and mint leaves. They poured cups of herbal brew over Aislinn's head. As it trickled down to her feet, they sang and prayed, begging the ancestors to let her go. The refrain, "Do not follow. It is not your time to join the ancestors. Let go of her hand," filled the air. They continued to shake her shoulders, bathe her body, and shout. Finally, the shouting and shaking broke the spell, pulled her out of the shadow's grip. In Aislinn's mind, her aunt's voices had been a distant howling wind. In the haze, she had remembered seeing a faded photograph of that woman once. On her return to the real world, Aislinn described the woman she had followed and remembered seeing a photograph of her in an album. In an old album, her family explained that it was her great-great-grandmother, Elizabeth. She was the daughter of a local woman and one of the English Navy men assigned to the village dockyard in the mid-1800s. Great-great-great-grandma had been the eldest of the Englishman's 10 offsprings. "You look like her," they said. "She has come again in you, Aislinn." And so Aislinn learned not to follow her other eye, to let the sightings come and go, to ignore the stalking of ancestors searching for her. She did not wish to be taken away. When the shadow visited again, Aislinn was a teenager. It was a mist floating in front of her in human shape as she climbed the steps to her home. Not wanting it to take hold of her thoughts, she had wiped her eyes to remove the unwanted shroud. She wondered what it wanted, but knew she had to ignore the invitation to walk beside it. And where would it have led her? Into a frightful void? The underworld? Would she have gone quickly like Cousin Virginia, who had died of cardiac arrest the week before? Did her cousin follow the vision in her other eye? Decades later, far from the Caribbean islands, on the African continent, an apparition appeared one night as Aislinn corrected student essays. She knew then that it would never leave her alone. She saw it through the portal of the kitchen door, sitting at the kitchen table, waiting, fingers fluttering like white petals in the breeze. Was it waiting for her to enter, then take her away in the still twilight? She did not enter the kitchen, did not wait. She fled to her bedroom, to the comfort of her bed and husband. In another land, on a second continent, many years later, the phantom showed its face again. appearing as a young woman in long green glittering robe, walking past Aislin's waking eyes as she napped on a sofa. The phantom, no longer a shroud, waited but fled when Aislinn sat up. Did the phantom reveal too much? Would Aislinn find the woman among the photos on the browning, brittle pages of the decades-old family album if it still existed? Was this phantom an ancestor come to snatch her away? Was it her guardian angel? When her eyes are closed forever, will it accompany her beyond the veil? Will it still be there waiting, no longer hiding in the shadows? So there is my Halloween story.
Nice, nice, nice.
Thank you, Althea. That's so nice. Any comments?
Very, very good.
Wonderful, Althea. It had me in a state of expectation, wanting to know what's coming next. Very good.
Thank you.
You know, I have a science fiction story that I've had ever since I was a teenager. I still have the anthology. It's called Shipshape Home. And this reminded me because it's about a young couple that have just moved into an apartment house. And the wife keeps saying to her husband that she is sure that the custodian has an eye in the back of his head. And of course, it turns out that she's quite right, that they're aliens, and that at the end of the story, it's not just the house that's being abducted from Earth, but the entire city block. And it all comes from this woman, very suspicious. No, I've seen it. He's got an eye in the back of his head. It's a great old story.
Any other comments? Is Harold in the room?
Hello.
Hi, Harold. No, not Harold. Harold.
Harold.
Harold Wildman. All right. I think I'm going to take his spot, and I'll also open the room because we have a bit of time. So if anyone would like to go, no pressure. We can always end early if not. If anyone would like to go and they have something and they didn't get a chance to message ahead, we can open the room for an open mic. All right.
All right.
So, and again, no pressure. If there
Well,
isn't
I have my story ready to go.
yes, you're on the list. I'm after you, but I'll take Errol's spot. Because the Portrait of a Ghost it's a short story, correct?
And just yes, a part of a story, yes.
Okay, so my piece is a poem, so I'm going to go between you and Althea to break it up a bit. If that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
All right. Just 1 minute. Turning on my video. All righty. Okay, so this is my poem. It's titled, but I'll say the title after. Laying in the grass, watching a colipatra crawl over my arm. Birds sing welcome home songs at dusk. Chain linked from belt to wallet rattle when we jump from branches to soft grass, if only to impress each other. We seek out spaces that's peaceful, where we can be on our own. We litter the grass, knowing only histers would bother us here. We are the ones that dare to enter, share the taboo and superstition. We wear black, draw eyeliner thick and heavy, like the poetry we share. Like the poetry we read and the bitter coffee we share. Deep and dark, we gather, get drunk on the dew, dance in the sunset. No one's around to watch. Our conversations are clouds that float and change. At times, the keeper chases us with his flashlight. Go to the mall, the theater, or the stillness of some library. But there is no breeze there, no ease there, no worms crawling on your pale, soft belly. The tightness eases here, away from the shocked looks. They gasp at our purple hair, matted in the secrets we share. We have discovered the mysteries of the world. We have rolled in thoughts of death and destiny, the same bottle of whispers, of knowing yet not knowing, the black nail polish and the dreams of forever. Jump from tree to earth and the softness underneath gives way a little. We giggle like hyenas. It carries on the chilly wind. And it is called Graveyard, because Graveyard, a Halloween poem, because what I envisioned when I was writing it was dead teenagers. So that's my piece. Any comments?
Nice, very nice, Gersha.
I thought you were talking about Jumbies. Well, same thing, dead teenagers are Jumbies too. So
Yeah.
Yeah, funny enough, when I was a teenager, we used to hang around in the graveyard quite a bit. So
Yeah. Years ago, I remember going to the haunted house ride at Disneyland. And part of the ride, you go through a graveyard. And I remember at one point, there was a teenager sitting behind me. We get into the graveyard. She says, "Oh God," she says, "this is so hokey."
at one point, I lived in a small town. So the kids would go to what we call Lime, either in the graveyard or in the woods by the reservoir.
well,
That's great.
as a child growing up, we were always told when you pass a graveyard not to point at anything on the graveyard. And if you did point, you had to bite your finger to prevent it from falling off. So no, these are some of the things that we grow up with. So you bite your finger if you pointed
Yeah.
so that you have your finger when you pass the graveyard. Yeah.
That's nice.
I learned something similar. I learned like if like say you're talking about the broken leg or something, you point at your leg or whatever, you make a sign of the cross. Because if you don't,
Oh.
then you'll be the next one.
Yeah.
My sister and I were always fighting. She was about maybe 12 and I was about 7. And the same thing, we walked through the graveyard and she said, "Don't point," and I pointed. And she said, "The only way I can eliminate that spell is to bite my finger." And she kept taking me on, "Bite harder, harder." And I was biting. I almost drew blood. And that's how she got at me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I still have the teeth marks today.
There's a terrific scene in a Mel Brooks movie called To Be or Not to Be, in which one of the characters says to the Mel Brooks fella, well, good luck, good luck. And Mel Brooks said, "Oh, for God's sake, don't say that." He says, "That's really bad luck." He says, "Say, break your leg, break a leg." So so the fella goes out the door and immediately falls down the stairs. And he says, "What happened? What happened?" And he says, "Oh, for God's sake, don't say break your leg."
Oh, that's funny. All righty. If there are no other comments, we'll move right along to Harold.
Oh, okay. All right.
Harold, I believe, okay, it's gone, but I believe from memory, you're reading Portrait of a Ghost.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
this is the third chapter, because it seems to encapsulate a lot that's happened to it. Okay. There was no doubt about it. Cork had obviously left his cottage on the grounds of the lofty lord, and while drunk had been attacked by the feral dogs that roamed the nearby woods. By the time he was found by local huntsmen, there was not much left of him. Even his tongue, they remarked, had been ripped from his mouth, and what the dogs didn't take, the scavenging ravens and foxes did. His death must have occurred no more than 7 days following the birth of Annie's child. And it was for her, as well as Lyle and Samuel, a relief to know they would never more be plagued by the man. And the big black dog? Now it was a stray in need of a home, but it was altogether too large an animal for either Lyle or Samuel to consider taking in. Nor did they much care for it, continuing to hang about as it did so near to the forge and the cottage, and too close to Annie and the baby for comfort. Still, how could they take offense against an animal that did no harm? And then the lofty lord paid the village a visit, something he rarely did, and told his tenants that he had considered taking in the dog himself, but that the animal did not like to come near Cork's cottage, and thus far could not be enticed to come inside the manor house. He had therefore considered putting the animal down, but had decided against doing so, as it would be, he said, a bloody shame to kill an animal so beautiful and so mild. His final decision allowed it to roam free and to feed it when it needed feeding, and he hoped the villagers would do the same to the poor beast, to which suggestion they generally agreed, as much in charity to the dog as to please the lofty lord. And what damage does it do? He asked, and they answered, none whatsoever. Before the lofty personage left the village, Samuel asked the question all were thinking. Why, my lord, did you bring Cork here in the first place? To which Lord Beauchamp replied in his loftiest tones, ah, yes, why indeed? I brought him here to catch bloody poachers who've been skillfully taking my conies and my pheasants. But all the damned fool did was dally about the village, lovesick for some local girl, I heard. And after calling out about it, oh yes, I occasionally hear about these things, he got drunk. Bloody damned poachers could have stolen all my wild game, and he wouldn't have given a bloody tinker's damn. So he's gone, and a bloody good reason, said I, to a bloody worthless man. And now the bloody dog's the problem. And do you know, the dog was never his. The fool told me the dog attached itself to him as he journeyed here, as strange a story as ever I've heard. Said it kept trailing him and made him afraid. So bloody big and so silent. So he found an iron chain, he told me, though I suspect he bloody well stole it, and kept it round the beast's neck. And is it a male or a bitch? Samuel asked. It's kept its distance, and I don't think any of us have ever seen it void itself one way or t'other. Not that we've been that particular about its particulars. The creature's a bitch, Lord Beauchamp said, though for a female to be so bloody quiet remains a mystery to me. And I say this with all respect to you, Samuel, and to your Annie, who laughs and makes delightful sounds, I've been told. But the dog, she is silence itself on four paws. It took the villagers well over a month to get over the village of the lofty lord, and when the hubbub had at last died down, Sybil thought it high time for her to pay a visit to Samuel and speak with him about what had been pressing on her thoughts. First making sure that Lyle was on an errand, Cyril approached the blacksmith one fine wintry morning at the forge, and after pleasantries, she said, I've come to talk about the dog and what happened on the morning of your granddaughter's birth. Oh, is there a connection? Samuel asked. There well may be, Sybil answered. I'll speak plain, Samuel, and tell you the dog is inhabited. Inhabited? I don't understand. By what? Fleas? Sybil gave him a hard look. No flea would dare inhabit that animal, she said. It's inhabited, I'm saying, possessed. She's possessed, she is. And I say this to you, Samuel, in confidence. As you well know, I'm not a woman who subscribes to whimsies, nor are you a tattler. Now, will you listen and stop your flippancies about fleas? Cowed, Samuel said, speak, Sybil. Fleas are forgotten. The old woman moved close to him, and speaking softly, she related her impression of what happened between her and the dog, even telling her what she had said, speaking to it as though it were human, and how it obviously understood her words. And have you noticed how she doesn't congregate with the village curs? Sybil asked. She remains aloof, always standing apart and at a distance. I tell you, Samuel, that dog holds inside a spirit, a restless spirit waiting, wanting to speak out, and watching us watching our every move. I'm sure of it, through the dark eyes of that black beast. You're telling me that some ghost has taken over that dog, or is that dog? Asked the skeptical Samuel. You know, my beloved Iluma believed in spirits. Oh, she believed in them as firm as you and I believe in the blood coursing through our veins. She often told me of communing with them, speaking with them as though they were alive as she and I. And to please her, I tried to believe. I tried mighty hard. But the reality, Sybil, the reality in broad daylight is different from stories told to children around a fire to scare them to sleep. One important thing, however, Illuma told me about spirits is this, and I've no reason to doubt the reasoning of it. They're in a predicament, an ongoing predicament they can't get out of. She believed that something awful happened to the people they were, or to someone they loved, that caused them to be the restless and forlorn spirits they are. And what a predicament it is, isn't it? She would say. For surely if it were not, there would be no ghosts, would there? They would be happy in all these unhappy wraiths, or at least contented with their afterlife, be it heaven, as we call it, or perhaps some wherever we know not of. And they wouldn't have the insistent need, or is it a sinister obsession, to plague us with their ghostly comings and goings, and with their possessing of us or our belongings. She said to me, my Illuma did, in case it has never occurred to you, Samuel, ghosts are eternal. Having gone through death and now as dead things, they are forever. She would not say live forever, for she said their life is not like our living life awaiting death. As ghosts, she said, they simply are and always will be. Perhaps, she said, that's what scares us most about them. They never go away. And if they did go away, where would they go? Finding peace and happiness is not so easy in this world for us, the living. How much more difficult it might be in the next and in the midst of an eternal predicament. And now, Sybil, you, as a sensible woman as ever lived in this absurd old world, you tell me that you believe that that poor, sad animal is possessed? Sybil, with my two still good eyes, I see no predicament about that sad beast. It's just a dog, Sybil, just a dog. So can you tell me who is possessing it and why, for God's sake? Sybil for a moment was silent, and then she sighed and said, yes, for God's sake indeed. For his sake and for the sake of all the disappointed and the hurt and the abandoned who died before their time and in pain. Samuel, you speak so lovingly of your dear Illuma. Can you tell me how she died? Oh, Sybil, you touch me to the quick, to my very quick, Samuel murmured. She died giving birth to Annie, to my adorable Annie. And then you left her village with the child? You took Illuma's baby from her and traveled across deep waters to this place? Well, what else could I have done? I could not leave my daughter there. Illuma was dead. Her relations did not want a child, a mere worthless girl child, and fathered by a worthless white man. She would not have been cared for. Illuma died. She died, Sybil, and I still grieve for her. And as she died in the pain of giving birth, she could not possibly have even known her daughter. Oh, no, Samuel, you do not know that. You cannot know that, exclaimed Sybil most vehemently. The child was carried by her for 9 months. She knew the feel of her. She knew her weight. She knew her heartbeat. She knew her movements within her. She knew her, Samuel, even as Illuma drew her last breaths, giving Annie night. I'm sure she knew her child, and you took that child away. So I wonder now most deeply after what you've related to me, what if it be Illuma's grieving spirit that has somehow discovered her child and is inhabiting that dog? Meaning no disrespect to you, Sybil, but that is a fantastic assumption. And I cannot think of Illuma as a vengeful spirit. She was never a vengeful woman. And in any case, how in God's name would I find that to be so, her spirit or any spirit in that dog? It can't speak to me. Why, it won't even bark, Sybil. The animal won't even bark. And I can't speak to a dog. Why not? Sybil asked, and she smiled, just a little smile, a wry smile. I did, Samuel. I did, she said. And many men who own dogs speak to them all the time, and even foolishly expect answers from their speech-stricken hunting hounds. Now, here's a dog that's not quite a dog, a bit more than just a dog, I'm sure of that. So speak to it. Speak to her, Samuel. Speak to her. You'll know, oh, I'm sure you'll know, if it be Illuma, or if it be some malignant ghost come to bedevil us. Or perhaps it's just my old woman's fancy, I who have none, foolishly seeing and hearing strange things in this absurd old world. But then, Samuel, but then, and she gripped his arm forcefully as she whispered, if it be not your beloved Illuma come to claim her child, and if it be not some stray spirit on its own mad errand, and if it be not my foolish imagination, what then is it?
Mhm.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful piece, Harold.
Thanks.
Any comments?
Well,
Really nice, Harold. Congratulations. Okay.
Thanks, Willard. Thanks.
I'd just like to say we will never look at a black dog in the same way. And I think just like my story, you know, we have spirits can cross continents. And then you think that we carry our ancestors with us. We carry them with us, so they cross continents, you know, in the new generation and the generation after. So you think of the possibilities of where your imagination can take you when you are creating ghost stories. But yes, this black dog is a powerful symbol of the power of the afterlife, and yeah, that they travel with you. And the mother of the child is traveling with her child. She is a part of that child. So you look at all the possibilities there of well, we say the supernatural, but there are lots of things that the world is very complex and we don't understand the whole power of it all. And so in our fantasy, we can explore all of these possibilities. So thank you for sharing, Harold.
Thank you, Alicia. I know you read the book, so you know what's what.
Yeah,
You know the surprises, yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Harold. Any comments? Okay, if not, I will move to open the floor for an open mic. Is there anyone that would like to read at this time?
I just have two small pieces, if I may.
Certainly, June. Welcome. Thank you for sharing.
Yes. The first is called This is Halloween. Goblins on the doorstep, phantoms in the air, owls on witches' gate posts, giving stare for stare. Cats on flying broomsticks, bats against the moon, stirring round of fat cakes with a solemn spoon. Whirling apple parings, figures draped in sheets, dodging, disappearing up and down the streets. Jack-o'-lanterns grinning, shadows on a screen, shrieks and starts and laughter. This is Halloween. And there's another little one I have here. The middle of the night. This is a song to be sung at night when nothing is left of you and the light, when the cats don't bark and the mice don't move and the nightmares come and nuzzle you, when there's blackness in the cupboards and the closet and the hall and a tipping, tapping, rapping in the middle of the wall, when the lights have one by one gone out, all over everywhere, and a shadow by the curtains bumps a shadow by the chair. Then you hide beneath your pillow with your eyes shut very tight, and you sing, "There's nothing sweeter than the middle of the night." I'm extremely fond of shadows, and I really must confess that cats and bats don't scare me. Well, they couldn't scare me less. And most of all, I like the things that slide and slip and creep. It really is surprising how fast you fall asleep in the middle of the night. Thank you.
Those are wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very wonderful. Any comments?
Thank you.
Yeah, oh, lovely. I was just thinking, I just posted this on Facebook, but it's an old Scottish prayer that I've known for a long time, and I'm sure you may have too, you know. From ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night, good Lord deliver us.
Mhm.
Thanks, Harold. Okay, so we have about 15 minutes to go. I think we can certainly close early today. We
Well,
have. Is there someone else that wanted to go? We still have time.
no, I just had a question.
Sure, Althea.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Latu Ferguson's piece, and I was just wondering how much is an impact is how much an impact is Halloween on Trinidad? Do you find it only in the big towns, or do you does everyone do all the children take part in Halloween now?
Well, I can answer. Well, I'll let Heather.
I'm in Canada, so I'm just guessing at the way it must be, you know, because when I grew up in Trinidad, we didn't have Halloween. We had All Saints, and that's what we that's how we mark that time of the year.
Yeah.
And
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry.
no,
Hi,
go ahead.
Hi.
Yeah, we need to hear from somebody in Trinidad now.
Hi, afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi, everyone. Well, just this week, I was talking about that with my students because, like, I was telling the children, well, these are Form 1, so they are like 11, like 11, 12 years old. And I was telling them, Halloween is a recent thing, because when I was small, well, I grew up in the 80s, we just looked at Halloween as something foreign. We would see movies and you would see children trick or treating and that sort of thing. But here in Trinidad, we didn't have that. Like what Heather was saying about All Saints, that was the only thing we really knew about. For All Saints, All Souls, you go and you clean graves and that sort of thing. Well, I never took part in it, but that was the tradition, right? So like recent years, um, just yesterday I went into a variety store and they have like loads of Halloween paraphernalia, like masks, candy, like stuff to collect candy, Halloween cups and stuff like that. And it's going to be sold. So, I think Halloween is catching on a lot in Trinidad as opposed to when I was a child. It was something that people didn't celebrate at all. But like one of my friends, she's in her 50s, but she lived in Pointe-a-Pierre when she was small, and she said like they used to do trick or treating, but I believe those would have been like those Texaco workers and so on. And in gated communities and like in places like Palmies, I think they do trick or treating, but like in normal, well, I shouldn't say normal, but like in villages and towns where it's open, I don't think people do that because of the crime and so on. But yeah, but Halloween, there are Halloween parties, there are Halloween celebrations. So, it has become a part of our culture in a way, so, it is, what I mean? People take part. So, yeah.
Would anyone else like to go and say something? Thanks, Alicia.
No problems.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about my experience of this thing called Halloween. I think I share my thoughts are in sync with Chandra's thoughts on Halloween that Heather read. My first experience of Halloween is a literary experience. You know the novel To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee? I was reading that. I had to study that in Form 5. And there was towards the climax of the novel, the girl, one of the characters in the novel, Scout, is in a pumpkin costume. And I couldn't understand that as an 18-year-old. I couldn't understand her in a pumpkin costume. And they were attacked by one of the persons who didn't like how their father was defending an African person, Afro-American, right? Accused of rape. So that is my first experience, a literary experience of Halloween, the pumpkin thing. And so I enjoyed Arati Janki's piece too about pumpkin pride. It sent me back to that novel, To Kill a Mockingbird. So that was a literary experience, and I couldn't understand that, and but eventually I understood, right? And later on, you had colleagues from school when I was teaching, inviting us to Mount Lambert, to get our children involved in this trick and treat. I said, where's that trick and treat thing? I don't know about this, But the wives had to dress up like witches and so on. But so we went and we had the children involved in the trick and treat. And then much later on, so you see how my experience is moving from literary to actual and that. And then I hear my granddaughter dress up as a witch, and they posting picture of this granddaughter now. So just to sync with what Alyssa was just saying, it's a tradition that has taken over. Well, it's becoming very popular in the country. As she said, you see now stores full of Halloween paraphernalia selling and so, right? I enjoyed today's session. I'm not a Halloween fan up front. I'm not a Halloween fan. That's not my tradition. That's what I say is like Chandra's thoughts on Halloween in Trinidad. You talk about Heather, the pillar ambassadors of the world. I don't see myself as a pillar ambassador. I'm sorry to say, right? But yeah, so we had a nice variety of renditions from people. We had 3 pieces from Moti, Willard's piece, Moti himself, and Sapin. Sapin is a lovely story. And then, but the one I liked, in addition to Chandra's thoughts, was Althea's piece on Aisling with another eye. Is it that eye, where you're crossing the 2 worlds, right? The living and the dead. We have in our tradition where children are born with a veil over their eye. I don't know, Althea, if that's the same thing you're talking about, where you can see things. They see more than right. So they see there's a connection between the living and the dead. So that's one more thing, where this all has Halloween brings me. And now we have poetry and prose with a Halloween theme. and so I don't know where we're going next now. Okay, that's my bit from a literary, actual, then familial, and now poetry and prose. But I still remain not impressed with Halloween. Not my thing.
True, I can see that, but you know, with the world becoming smaller with the advent of increased communication, internet, email, that type of thing, various countries will adopt things from other countries. Like, for example, Caribana. You know, Trinidad Carnival, they have Caribana in Toronto and Carnival in Los Angeles, Carnival in Miami. England, there's a big carnival there. And so it's almost like in reverse. So the Halloween concept is being slowly entertained in Trinidad. And in reverse, we have things like steel band music, calypsos, and Caribana, which is very, very big now in many foreign countries. I imagine it's the same phenomenon.
Yes, there's in Seattle, I vividly recall, and I know it's still going on, there is a big steel band of local Seattleites that plays a pan there in the streets, very often in front of Nordstrom's, which is a huge department store. They're very popular, and it's all Trinidad steel band in Seattle, Washington. And people love it. I think they've even made CDs of their work. Yeah. So yeah, and I remember, of course, many years in the States living there over Halloween, and it's really a lot of fun, not just for the kids, but for the adults. If you don't want to go trick or treating, you can hold parties at your home, or go to dances, all sorts of nonsense, all meant in good fun.
Thanks, Harold.
I just wanted to add, you know, like I wrote about Chandra, but those are really my thoughts and feelings to some extent. I know we can't stop culture from going back and forth, but I was not really popular with my kids when they were little because I didn't pay enough attention to Halloween and the Easter Bunny and all that stuff that I didn't grow up with. So when I had my own children, I had little conflicts with them over the importance of these things to them. Their friends were going trick or treating. Their friends were getting almost big Christmas type gifts from the Easter Bunny, and that was not my culture. And at Easter time, it was a religious thing for us in Trinidad. It wasn't like gift giving to that extent. And I find that some of these holidays in foreign are kind of getting a little out of hand. Yeah, I wasn't the typical Canadian mom, so my kids can tell you about that. But anyway, yeah, a lot of Chandra's feelings are my own.
Yeah, may I add something?
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've listened to all the comments and I so agree and endorse most of them. You know, I too, you know, grew up in Trinidad, and to me, when I was young in the 70s, trick or treating, Halloween seemed to be more of an American thing. You know what I mean? But I accepted it. I found it was cool because, you know, it involved kids and so on, and you know, so I really have I really don't have no much comments on the cultural aspect of it being imported here.
But there's a lot of
And more,
there's a lot of
and more on a spiritual path, you know. I have grave concerns about Halloween, you know, that's my personal convictions, you know. Because of the, you know, well, it's too long and drawn out to go into, but um, due to my deep spiritual convictions about it, I think there are very deep um, negative connotations to it. And it's all a big distraction using kids and fun and frolic. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but take my word for it. Halloween is not what people think it is. You know what I
Well,
mean?
it,
And
it was pagan in origin, and I did touch on that slightly.
yes,
But it really doesn't have anything to do with our culture. It
yeah,
was primarily Celtic and pagan and
yeah,
geared
true.
towards the upcoming winter. None of which applies to Trinidad,
Yeah.
really.
But
But
So
then,
yeah,
yes, I quite agree. But in a more personal way, in a spiritual way, yes, I get your point. That's why I endorse that. You know, it really does. Apart from the cultural differences, to me personally, it's not really something very you know positive in a life. If you understand what I'm trying to say. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Willard. Okay, it is 3 p.m. I just want to answer Althea's question just from my point of view. A few years ago, quite a few years ago, probably about 5 years ago, my girlfriend who has a child, she was taking her to the mall. And I know the stores at the mall was handing out trick-or-treats to the kids. So I don't know if they're still doing that, but I think that has then extended now to certain neighborhoods,
yeah,
gated communities and stuff like that. For the adults, we mostly have like Halloween parties, but we also have Diwali stuff too. So I think the stores had a really tough time this year because they were so close together, Diwali and Halloween. I think they're falling on the same day.
Yeah.
So it's been a battle. You'll walk into one store and you'll see all the Diwali stuff in the other store. And I think the stores are just trying to make money. And they're like, all right, where are we gonna go? What decorations are we gonna buy?
well, you know, in Canada right now, people are struggling with food prices and with income and money and all that. And I find that they still feel this holiday is like a pressure on ordinary families to come up with the trick-or-treating thing when they probably don't have money to feed themselves. Sometimes it's a case of, you know, do I pay my rent or buy food?
Yeah.
With certain households in this country, and that they will feel the pressure more. And so, yeah, it's kind of a little bit out of hand now. And then I also touched on the fact that they're saying sugar and cocoa prices have gone up, so the treat prices are going to go up. So people trying to find alternatives, like maybe more potato chips or something like that. It can be a struggle. I mean, a lot of people think that foreign, you know, in foreign everything's prosperous, but there are hard times too. And I find these holidays can really sap. Just when you think you're breaking even, you know, then a holiday will come up and you feel pressured.
Oh yeah,
So
this is definitely the golfer season. Well, not golfer season, that comes out though. But this is definitely the season. Going into the burrs. Well, you have the Diwali, then you have Christmas. I know Christmas in Trinidad is like a month-long celebration, so it's definitely takes a lot out of you. But
yeah,
I passed by last night. I went grocery shopping, and I passed by the Naga, and the traffic was absolutely insane. It was utter chaos. I mean, all the surrounding malls, they were using their parking for persons wanting to visit there as well. So even if you weren't going, you still got hit with the traffic.
Mm.
So people are still definitely have Diwali on mind in Trinidad, and we're definitely celebrating Diwali.
yeah.
I think the pressure comes a lot with the kids, but I saw a lot of kids outside last night as well too. And they look like they were just having fun, the best of both worlds.
Well, I
Um,
think what's important, Gersha, is to realize that celebrations evolve like everything else. Valentine's Day in the middle of February is an extension of an ancient Roman festival called the Lupercalia, which has absolutely nothing to do with love. It's a fertility festival. And
yeah.
you know, very well known. And the young men of Rome would go to the temples. Goats would be sacrificed. The goats would be skinned into strips, which were known as febura, which is where we get the month February name from. Febura, which are goat skin whips. And they were using these strips, and the entire population of Rome, and this is all historical fact now, would
Yeah.
wait outside the walls of Rome, and if you were hit with one of these bloody febula, you would have a fertile year, good children, good crops, and so on. And there is quite a commotion at curbside because everybody wanted to get hit by one of these bloody whips. And
Okay, well,
that-
thanks for that.
yeah,
Thanks
from
for
that,
that, Harold.
yes, from that festival, we have Valentine's Day.
Well, thank you for that, Harold. You're so right. But moving along in terms of like just the Halloween and stuff, we Poetry and Prose wanted to do this year because it was falling on the same day, and we have our Diwali celebration coming up next week. So we're having back-to-back meetings. We're having this week, I am chairing the Halloween, and next week, Sunday, Mutilal is chairing our Diwali celebration.
Both
So-
very good ideas, very good ideas, Persia.
Yeah, so that's how we're doing it. We didn't do folklore month this year, and I'm sure next year, Krishna, we will jump right back into it because our traditional folklore is very close to our hearts. And I always thought it was curious, folklore month falls in October as well. I think this is just the season, I guess, no matter where you are, for things to kind of come down and get quiet. And even, I know Trinidad is a tropical island, but around Christmas time, it still gets a little rainy here. So the weather gets a little more gray. So that's that. So please, I hope everyone will join us next week. I know it's hard to do 2 back-to-back Sundays, but if you can, we would love to have you because Mutilal works really hard on the Diwali celebration. And I just have a couple reminders. Commonwealth is coming up on November 1st. So if you are writing a story or if you choose to enter one of your stories, please do. It's November 1st is the deadline for the Commonwealth short story competition. We read one of the winning authors this year, which was Kevin Hussein, Hungry Ghost. We read his showing and he won that competition. So even if you don't think you might win, throw your hat in. If you have something to offer, definitely. And our book club, we are reading Black Cake currently. And between now and the end of the year, we have to fit Black Cake in somewhere. That's our book club meeting. So I'm hoping that everyone is reading it. Or if you don't read it, go sneak a peek at the Cliff Notes version, something. And the last thing, so Commonwealth Book Club, Diwali, and the last thing we have coming up would be our end of year celebration. We meet once a year, face to face, where we put on our fancy dresses, fancy clothes, and we read the best of our work. So I'm still working out a location. We may end up back at Buffet King. A lot of people like Buffet King. I am looking at Ohana and waiting for them to get back to me because Ohana is a really nice restaurant. You can look it up on Facebook. And if they're able to accommodate us. If not, we may just be at Buffet King. So that's where we're at. So, and the date hasn't changed. So we typically do it the first Sunday in December for our writers' luncheon. So that's all I have to say. And I thank you so much. We went over a little bit. And isn't that funny? We thought we were going to close early and we went over. Thank you, everyone, for your offerings today, for your reading.
Good meeting.
Thank you, Mutilal. He's not here, but thank Mutilal for selecting all the readings and getting everyone organized.
Okay, good night.
Good night. And
Thank you,
thanks.
Sophia, for staying up with us. Have a
Yes.
wonderful week, and I'll see you guys next
Okay.
week.
All right. See you
Okay.
later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye and thanks very
Yeah,
much.
bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.